Another good thing to do is kind of get with watered down white, and you kind of follow the cracks. A little bit of reflection in the teeth. Little flashes of white in the background always help out a little bit, make it interesting. On the touch-up session, I'm going to add a little bit more white even, just to make it even more interesting. That's the good thing about touch-up sessions during portraits. There's always so much you can do. If you're somebody like me that doesn't do tattoos or doesn't do portraits just for the money, you're able to have fun with it, and you're able to say, I'm finished. I like to go over it with a little bit of alcohol and a little bit of soap, just to kind of get that last dot of stencil stuff off. There's a little bit of purple showing through still, because that stuff, like I said earlier, it works. But as far as I'm concerned, stick a fork in it, because you're done. Okay, it's been 3 weeks since we last tattooed, so we're going to go ahead and go in today and touching up the portrait. 3 weeks to a month is generally what I like to give for the tattoo to heal properly. So once it heals properly, it's time to get in the skin. You got to make sure the skin's healed so that when you go into it, it doesn't cause further damage or further scarring. Now I'm going to show you guys a couple of techniques that I like to use to touch up the portrait. So one of the things we want to look for before you start the touch-up is to make sure that there isn't any scarring, any noticeable scarring that's still healing, any shiny, stretchy skin that's still in the process of healing. As you guys know, that's something you don't want to go back into because it'll cause further scarring, permanent scarring actually. So just making sure the skin's flat, not shiny, not scarring, completely healed, no scabs of course, and just ready to go. Okay, I'm going to cover this tattoo and all the techniques for touching up in a way where I'm going to just go ahead and go from left to right, and I'm going to go ahead and explain as I'm working. So we'll go ahead and cover a bunch of areas. What we're going to do first is find out what's supposed to be pitch black, 100% black, and make sure that it is black by touching it up. And then also we're going to move on to what's supposed to be gray that might have faded a little bit. So always get your reference and have that on standby and really pay close attention. And I'm going to go ahead and start now. So I'm going to get into here where the black faded just a little bit. I would say 100% is what we wanted. It probably faded to about 95. Part of having a perfect portrait is touching it up to where it is 100% of what you need, and it just makes it for a better portrait. After all, the goal is to make it look as real as possible. So a lot of times when you do a portrait and you see your customer and they go on their merry way and they never come back, sometimes you'll run into them later on, and every artist has that thought where they look at the tattoo and they know they could use a touch-up, but it all depends on two things really. It depends on what the artist is looking for as far as reputation. If he wants to go the extra mile to get a good reputation, he has to go the extra mile on his tattoos, and part of going the extra mile is touching up tattoos. One of the reasons why we charge a lot for portraits is because we have to factor in the touch-up time. We don't charge them for it because, like I said, it's factored in the original price that should be at least $750, so keep that in mind. Now as we get darker into here, I'm starting to notice that the hand faded a little bit, just a little bit. Some of the grays should be a little bit darker grays, so I'm going to go in there and make them happen. Very important as you're touching up to always refer to the reference. As you can see, it's starting to kind of come to life again. Certain things that faded, touching up brings back the contrast that we need. And you just want to gently work it in. You don't want to overdo anything. You just gently refer to your reference back and forth. We'll see what the final result is soon. In my cup, it faded. It's kind of about a 80% black in the bottom of the cup. It faded to about a 50 or 60. You almost want to scan the tattoo at the same time. One of the main key factors really is paying a close attention to detail. A lot of portrait artists instantly become 20 to 30% better just by following that rule. Paying attention to your reference and paying attention to detail. The good thing about that is it doesn't require learning how to do that. You know, we can talk about other techniques that take time to learn how to do and master, but paying attention to detail doesn't take time to learn. It just takes determination. It takes a thought pattern of just knowing you have to do it and doing it. Sometimes your mood can affect your tattooing, but when you tattoo from the mode, it's kind of like a computer. You just do what needs to be done. You scan through it. All these contrasts we're hitting right now is really starting to bring it to life. Always remember, portrait tattoos need to be touched up, always. The only reason why I'm more prone to touching up portraits versus other tattoos is because we want it to fade the right way when it heals. The final result has to look like the picture, so touching up tattoos, portrait tattoos really helps with that. Make this pop a lot more by adding this dark tone, which faded. And remember, fading has to do with a lot of things. It's not always the tattoo artist not doing the right job. Sometimes people's skin is different than others. The skin rejects the ink, some of the ink. The healing process, maybe, you know, we never know what our customers do once they leave the shop. But, you know, it doesn't really matter because your reputation's on the line. So whatever the case may be as to why it faded, doesn't really matter. You just got to know that it's faded, know how to fix it, and do it. And the benefits is them having the ability to show off a perfect portrait at the bar or the next tattoo convention or wherever they're at. And in turn, that turns out to you getting more customers. One thing that's good to consider is some of you may need a third touch-up session. If you're not confident you can pull it off in 2 sessions, it doesn't hurt to go back and do another session. So now this glass is starting to pop like it's supposed to. It's looking more round and more shiny. Also, too, I'm noticing the jacket is definitely faded, so. Contrast is very important. Part of nailing that perfect contrast is in the touch-up, actually, because just when you think you got it down the first time around and it fades, it doesn't have the contrast that it should. Black's probably the most important color to pay attention to when you're doing touch-ups. You want to make the darkest tones that you need stay dark, because that's kind of what pushes every other tone off and sets every other tone off, is that blackest black. A lot of times I'll start a portrait and I'll do the hair first, or I'll do something that's completely black just to gauge all my other tones off of. You know, something like this, the bottom of the post here, it's like just me adding this black right there makes it rounder, and I'm going to come in here right about here. It's faded. It's sort of even toned throughout there, but on the picture it's not that way. So if I come in here, hit that really quick, I mean that little hit right there changed the look of it all. Now we're getting somewhere. This I want to be perfectly black. It's sort of faded, but come in there with some pure black, set it off. See the contrast starting to pop now. That's partially why I like to use rotaries too, because in my experience with rotaries, the hit is so hard, it really packs in the ink to where the touch-ups are kind of minimal. If it's not set properly, your standard machine, there's a lot of bogging down. You know, when you're tattooing it, you know, it bogs down, it loses its power, it loses its punch, and you kind of end up working the skin too much over and over again due to the fact that it's losing its punch, and you end up working the skin so hard that it rejects a lot of the ink. So these rotaries hit so hard that you can kind of get in and get out, minimal damage. Remember, the less damage you can do to put the ink in the skin, the quicker it'll heal and the less touch-ups you'll need. Sometimes these broad areas, they end up looking the same tone when it fades. You gotta make sure it is a round object. So you gotta make it look that way. Some of these broad areas where it's a lot of gray and a lot of skin, they definitely need a lot of detail as far as touching up. He has a black suit on, so we're going to darken it up just a little bit, starting with the ends. To me, it faded to where it looks kind of like the same tone. Now we're going to go ahead and jump back into this right here. This is pretty dark, but you know, faded just a tiny bit, just enough to where I'm not happy. I'm going to be picky with myself and just kind of scrub over the whole dark area with pure black again. Sometimes you don't realize how much it faded until you start scrubbing in the black and you start to compare it. The transition from the shadow of his jacket to his hands, little spots didn't heal properly, and it doesn't look right because the hand's kind of hiding within the shadows, so I'm going to kind of graze over it a little bit. A lot of times it's good to use these broad wash techniques. You just kind of wash over the whole tattoo. These types of areas right here are kind of tricky. It's really, really hard to notice the subtleties of how they barely didn't make the gradient we need. This area is a 50% or a 40% gray, and we want to bump it up 5 to 10%. That's kind of tricky. You just got to kind of keep testing consistency of the water and ink until you know you got it right, and then add that extra 5 to 10%. The ear is supposed to be pitch black. That faded. Just barely the tip of the end of the glass, side. Right here, his face blends right into his jacket. There's no contrast here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick it up by darkening the jacket, which is what we need to darken. The most important part of the touch-up is the face, especially if that's all you're doing, just a face. I mean, luckily we have so many different elements on this tattoo right here, but the normal portrait is just a face, maybe a little shoulder. You just want to barely go in there and darken up what needs to be darkened. Usually on a face, your lights are already there. It's usually the darkest darks that fade and the in-betweens that fade. Definitely don't want to overwork the face. Another thing you can do if you're not used to the mags, I like to touch up sometimes with a 1205 needle, round liner, or a single needle, just to really, you know, whatever you're more comfortable with. I'm sort of in a way using a single needle right now though. Actually not sort of, I am using a single needle right now, just with my mag. Okay, we definitely have some fading on the nose. Another reason why tattoos fade too is sometimes the clients pick or they over scrub it in the shower because it's fun. I'm guilty of it myself. You know, you're in the shower and you're scrubbing your tattoo and it's healing and it's just kind of falling off, kind of like shedded skin. I gotta always remind myself that that's not the best thing to do. Get there's some texture in there. Getting these darks in here, these 60 to 70% darks, makes all these other tones come to life. So it's starting to come to life even more with this. And this is basically that concept of playing with your contrast. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit more into the darks, kind of like we did on the other couple sides. Sometimes just adding the blacks, you could almost get away with the touch-ups being successful. It just kind of makes every other tone just pop out more. Just remember, patience is one of the things that will make your portrait look the best. Just patience. So we're kind of winding it down, just kind of giving it that last little stretch. We're going to touch up now the white. His white didn't fade that much at all, but we're just going to make it to where it lasts forever. Just like the black, you don't have to get that extensive with the touch-ups. You just do what needs to be done. Remember, watering down the whites is always good. When this heals, the white's going to look so white that it's just going to pop the whole tattoo. So now we're going to do a recap of what we've just done. Kind of go ahead and give it a little white down, and you do that last double check, just making sure you got it all. Sometimes you might have to grab the machine again. Everything looks good. We covered a lot of areas. When you look at the whole tattoo towards the end, it looks like you went through the whole thing. You know, it's just, you're adding a little to it here and there, but it's good to just cover the whole tattoo. Getting in there, the darks, the lights, you know, paying attention to the darks is important. Paying attention to those middle grays is very important, always. If you constantly compare to the reference, you're gonna find that you'll automatically know what you missed on and what's faded and what should be black or what should be gray or what should be white. The key rule here to touch-ups is just paying close attention to the reference. This tattoo's gonna heal it beautiful, but like I said, if you guys think you might need a third one, it's not a bad thing to do one more session. Usually it gets easier and easier, so if there is a third session to do, you might only need to spend 5 to 10 minutes on it. I think the total time we spent on this touch-up was maybe a good half an hour. But with all these techniques that we've applied today, this is going to heal up just perfect. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, but I cannot stress enough to you that this presentation was not just about technique, but also about responsibility to the customer. This isn't a dress rehearsal, you guys. You get one shot at doing a portrait the right way. So learn to master the portrait on paper before you attempt to master it on skin. To see more of my work, go to www.francovescovi.com. Also there you'll be able to check out my new rotary tattoo machine that I designed. Thank you guys for watching, and may the force be with you.